The valley was a wound carved deep into the planet's surface, its ridges sharp as broken bone, and its air thick with the metallic sting of ozone. Lieutenant Mason Hale crouched behind a jagged outcrop, his visor cracked and his lungs burning with dust. The HUD in his helmet flickered weakly, showing only fragments of what was left of his team. 5 men had dropped with him. Now, only 2 signals blinked faintly green. The others were gone, cut down by plasma fire or buried under the collapse of the western ridge. The mission was a failure, and the extraction bird that should have come 15 minutes ago wasn't coming at all. He shifted his weight and peered through the scope of his rifle. Below, the enemy moved like shadows of liquid metal, tall, precise, and methodical. Their armor gleamed in the dying light, reflecting the twin sons of Kryn, 47. They weren't rushing. They didn't need to. They were sweeping the field, confident that no human would survive the hunt. Hale felt a flicker of anger at their calm efficiency. He had seen their kind before, patient predators that assumed victory the moment they took the high ground. But he learned something in his years of fighting them. Humans had a way of refusing to die on schedule. A rasping cough broke through his calm lieutenant, their flanking. The voice belonged to Petty Officer Reed, crouched a few meters away behind a fractured ridge spine. His armor was scorched black, one arm sealed in a crude splint made from carbon plating. The effort in his tone made it clear he wouldn't last long. "I see them," Hale answered. He adjusted his position, tracing the path of 3 alien soldiers edging along the ravine's lip. Their movements were too clean, too measured. They were testing, not committing. "Conserve ammo. We'll wait until they get closer." Reed laughed once, dry and bitter. "Closer, huh? That your plan, sir? It's the only one we've got." The silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of alien scanners sweeping over the rocks. Hale's rifle vibrated faintly with each pulse. He watched the edges of the valley flare pale blue, the light crawling closer like frost. When it reached them, there would be no hiding. He checked his magazine, 6 rounds left. Reed had fewer. The odds weren't bad. They were impossible. He leaned back against the rock and closed his eyes for half a breath. Images from the mission's start flickered through his mind. The drop from orbit, the rush of atmosphere burning around the pods, the rhythmic calm of his team's voices before the comms went dead. They had been tasked with disabling the alien relay beacon, a structure embedded in the planet's crust that jammed Earth's communications. The kind of mission no one volunteered for, but everyone knew had to be done. They had made it within sight of the target before the ambush. Now the beacon pulsed in the distance, a spire of obsidian light, mocking them with every beat. He opened his eyes. "Reed," he said quietly, "you still got that beacon locator?" Reed fumbled at his belt and pulled out the compact scanner. Its screen was cracked, but still glowing. "Yeah, but it's no good now. We're cut off." "Not for long," Hale said. He didn't elaborate. The younger man didn't need hope. He needed orders. Hale scanned the horizon again. The aliens had halted their advance, regrouping behind a cluster of basalt pillars. They were waiting for something. Reinforcements, maybe, or an orbital strike to finish what they'd started. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying the faint metallic whine of a drone's engine. Hale stiffened. The sound was distant, but distinct. He motioned to Reed to stay down and angled his scope toward the ridge. A glint of light caught his eye, a brief flash high above, where the ridge knifed up into the red sky. He adjusted the focus, expecting to see the glimmer of alien optics. Instead, he saw something else, a shape, small and dark, braced against the rocks. Then came the sound, a single sharp crack. One of the alien soldiers below dropped instantly, its armor shattering in a burst of energy. "What the hell was that?" Reed whispered. Hale didn't answer. Another shot rang out, and another alien fell. The remaining 2 scattered, firing plasma bolts into the ridge, but the return fire was precise, deliberate. Whoever was shooting knew exactly what they were doing. "Sniper," Hale murmured, but not theirs. Reed's voice rose with a spark of hope. "You think it's one of ours?" "Has to be," Hale said, though he didn't know who it could be. Every name on the mission roster was accounted for, except one. Cruz. Chief Petty Officer Elena Cruz. the sniper who'd gone dark after the drop. The logs had listed her as Kia when her pod's signal vanished over the western ridge. But if anyone could survive alone out here, it was her. Hale had seen her shoot through a storm with crosswinds that bent bullets like ribbon. He wanted to believe it was her. Another alien fell. The rest retreated into the shadowed basin below, their formation broken. Hale seized the moment. "Move," he ordered. "We regroup on that ridge." Reed hesitated, glancing toward the long stretch of open ground. "That's suicide. It's survival," Hale said, gripping the younger man's shoulder. "We don't move, they'll box us in. That sniper's giving us cover. Let's use it." They moved fast, keeping low as they crossed the valley floor. Plasma fire hissed overhead, striking the rocks around them. Dust exploded in their wake. Hale's muscles screamed with exhaustion, his armor feeling heavier with every step. Behind him, Reed stumbled but kept pace, clutching his rifle in his good hand. The sniper's fire came in steady intervals. 3 shots, pause, 2 more. Each burst cleared a path ahead. By the time they reached the base of a ridge, Hale's breath was ragged. He glanced back. The enemy had fallen back out of range. For the first time in hours, the silence wasn't a threat. It was a reprieve. Reed slumped against the rock, gasping. "You think that's really her?" Hale scanned the upper ridge again. The light was fading fast, and the wind howled through the crags like a living thing. "I don't know," he said, "but whoever it is just saved our lives." He tapped his comm, cycling through the frequencies. Static. Then, faintly, a voice, distorted but unmistakably human. "Echo 9, do you copy?" Reed's head jerked up. "Sir, that's—" "I know." Hale adjusted the signal, his heart pounding. "Cruz? That you?" The voice came again, clearer this time. "Took you long enough, Lieutenant." Hale allowed himself the smallest smile. Relief washed through him, tempered by something sharper, resolve. They weren't out yet, but for the first time since the drop, the fight didn't feel lost. "Good to hear your voice, Chief," he said. "We're coming to you." "Copy that," Cruz replied. "But you'd better hurry. They're regrouping." The comm went dead again, replaced by the faint echo of gunfire somewhere up the ridge. Hale reloaded his rifle and glanced at Reed. "You heard her." Reed groaned, pushing himself upright. "Always wanted to climb a mountain under fire." Hale chuckled once, low and humorless. "Then today's your lucky day." They started up the ridge, the alien beacon pulsing behind them like a dark heart against the horizon. Hale didn't look back. The mission had changed, but the purpose hadn't. Stay alive, finish what they started, and prove that even on a dead world, humans refuse to die quiet. Elena Cruz lay motionless beneath the shattered ridge, her cheek pressed against the rifle's cold frame, breath shallow and timed to the rhythm of the wind. Through her cracked scope, the valley below shimmered with heat distortion, the metallic ruins of the enemy drones still smoldering where her rounds had found them. She adjusted her aim slightly, scanning for movement, but only dust stirred in the sunlight. 3 shots, 3 kills. Not bad for a weapon patched together from scavenged parts and stubborn willpower. She shifted her weight, wincing as pain flared through her ribs. The crash had left her with a hairline fracture and a limp, but that had been 4 days ago, long enough for the pain to become background noise. Long enough to learn that surviving wasn't enough. She needed purpose, and the ridge gave her that. She'd stayed hidden here, observing, waiting for the right moment to rejoin the fight. When she'd spotted the flicker of human armor in the valley, her pulse had spiked. She thought she was the last one alive. Cruz tapped her helmet, cycling through frequencies. The static was constant like rain on glass. She tried again. "Echo 9, this is Shade. Respond." Her call sign, faint but familiar, hung unanswered in the void. Then, barely audible, a human voice broke through Hale's. The tone was unmistakable, clipped and calm, even under pressure. She exhaled in disbelief. So he made it. If he was alive, then maybe command hadn't abandoned them after all. She slung the rifle and crawled backward, careful not to silhouette herself against the skyline. The ridge was a patchwork of jagged basalt and broken alien plating, remnants of an old battle that predated humanity's arrival on Kryn. The metal hummed faintly when touched, like it still remembered the energy that forged it. Cruz didn't care why it glowed or what the scientists back home would say about reactive alloys. She cared that it provided cover and reflected thermal scans. She ducked into the crevice that served as her shelter. Inside, her supplies were laid out with surgical precision. A half-empty water pouch, 3 magazines, a ration bar, a torn photo folded so many times the edges had worn thin. It showed the team, Hale, Dwyer, Reed, Hayes, and herself, standing beside their dropship on Luna Base before the mission. They looked younger then, full of the kind of confidence that comes from believing you're unbreakable. She traced Hale's face with her thumb, then folded the photo and slipped it back in her pocket. Sentiment was dangerous, but it kept her sane. A faint tremor vibrated through the stone beneath her. She froze, listening. The sound was deliberate. Footsteps. Too heavy for drones, too cautious for animals. Human. She peered through the slit in the rock and caught a glimpse of movement near the valley floor. 2 figures, moving low and quick, weapons ready. Her heart jolted. Hale and Reed. She almost called out, but instinct overruled emotion. If she could see them, so could the enemy. Cruz crawled out and repositioned her rifle, sighting along the slope above the 2 men. She spotted the glint of alien optics farther up the ridge, scout drones, small and fast, sweeping in wide arcs. The aliens were adapting, triangulating where the earlier shots had come from. She steadied her breathing, adjusted for crosswind, and fired once. The nearest drone erupted in sparks. Another veered off, signaling the others. Cruz fired again, her modified rifle kicking against her shoulder. The weapon was built from human steel and alien energy cores, a Frankenstein hybrid that shouldn't have worked, but did because she refused to let it fail. She spoke softly into the mic again, timing her words between shots. Echo 9, if you can hear me, follow the ridge north. You've got 5 minutes before they regroup. Static. Then Hale's voice, faint but firm. Copy that, Shade. Good to hear your voice. The sound almost undid her. She bit down on the surge of emotion, forcing herself back into focus. You too, sir. Move fast. She watched them adjust their path, hugging the rock line and disappearing into the shadows. A flicker of pride warmed her chest. Hale had always been steady, even when everything else fell apart. That steadiness had kept them alive on Europa and Titan, places where panic killed faster than bullets. She'd followed him because he never ordered without reason, never wasted lives for protocol's sake. The ridge trembled again. A deeper vibration this time, something larger approaching. Cruz shifted her scope and spotted an alien crawler cresting the opposite slope. It moved like a tank with legs, 6 jointed limbs grinding through the stone. Mounted plasma turrets rotated methodically, scanning. They were hunting her. She exhaled through her nose, forcing calm. Fear was energy. Energy had to be controlled. She adjusted her position, dragging herself farther back along the ridge, using the terrain to mask her heat signature. Every motion had a count. The crawler halted, its turrets sweeping in a synchronized arc. Then abruptly it fired. A bolt of energy scorched the ridge not 10 meters from her position, showering her with molten rock. She rolled to her side, shielding her visor. The blast left her ears ringing, but her mind remained sharp. She needed distance. She grabbed her rifle and pack, crawling downward along a narrow ledge until she found another vantage point. The air smelled like ozone and burnt metal. Below, Hale and Reed were still moving, small figures against an endless wasteland. She took aim at the crawler's sensor array and squeezed the trigger. The bullet hit dead center, punching through the glowing eye. The machine staggered, one leg collapsing beneath it, then toppled sideways into the valley. A muted cheer crackled through her earpiece. Reed, she realized. He must have seen the explosion. She smiled despite herself. Still breathing down there? She asked. Hale's voice came through clearer now, the interference fading as the alien relay's local field weakened. We're alive. That your handiwork. Affirmative. Damn good shooting. Cruz glanced at the smoke rising from the wreck. You trained me. A brief silence followed, heavy with the kind of mutual understanding that didn't need words. Then Hale said, "We're heading for the high ridge. Meet us halfway if you can." "Copy." She packed quickly, slinging her gear and sliding down the slope. Every muscle protested, but adrenaline kept her steady. The terrain leveled briefly before rising again toward the ridge where the SEALs were headed. She could see faint heat signatures on her visor overlay. Friendlies closing in, aliens circling behind them. Crews crouched behind a rock, reloaded, and opened fire on the advancing shapes. Each shot found its mark. She didn't think about the distance or the odds. She thought about the mission, about Hale's voice cutting through the static, about the simple truth that she wasn't dead yet. And that meant the fight wasn't over. By the time she reached the ridge's midpoint, her arms trembled from exertion. She spotted Hale first, waving her forward, Reed close behind. For a moment, all the exhaustion dissolved. She allowed herself a rare grin as she climbed the last few meters. When she crested the rise, Hale met her halfway. He looked older than she remembered, grime streaking his armor, but his eyes were the same steady gray. "Thought you bought it in the crash," he said. "Guess I'm harder to kill than they thought." Reed laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "Shade, you're a damn ghost." "Not yet," she replied. The wind howled over the ridge, carrying the smell of scorched metal. They turned together to face the horizon, where distant figures moved through the haze. The enemy hadn't given up. Crews chambered around and glanced at Hale. "What's the play, sir?" He studied the valley below, expression unreadable. "We take the ridge. Make it ours." Crews nodded, settling beside him, rifle steady once more. The fight wasn't done, but for the first time in days, she wasn't alone. The ridge shuddered under the distant roar of artillery, dust rising like smoke from the fractured ground. Hale crouched behind a boulder and surveyed the valley through his visor. The alien formation was reforming. Sleek infantry units moving in coordinated phalanxes while drone clusters hovered above them like metal hornets. The momentary lull bought by Cruz's precision had ended. Their position was no longer secret. They had drawn blood, and the enemy was responding in kind. Cruz lay prone a few meters away, her rifle trained downrange, the faint hum of its hybrid core vibrating through the rock. Her face was calm, almost detached, but Hale could read the exhaustion beneath her eyes. He'd seen that same look reflected in his team countless times before. Soldiers running on grit and instinct, aware that every breath might be their last, but unwilling to surrender it cheaply. "How many rounds left?" Hale asked quietly. 8. Cruz replied without looking up. 2 mags if I strip the partials. "You." 5 for the rifle, 2 for the sidearm. Reed's got less. Reed adjusted his helmet, crouched near the fallen crawler. "I've got plenty of curses left if that counts." His attempt at humor was hollow, but it earned the smallest hint of a smile from Cruz. Hale appreciated it. Morale mattered as much as ammunition now. A metallic screech echoed across the ridge, followed by the rhythmic thud of heavy footsteps. Hale turned toward the sound, and his stomach tightened. The enemy was deploying walkers, 2 of them, each twice the height of human, their exoskeletal limbs glinting beneath the twin suns. Mounted cannons swiveled toward the ridge, tracking movement within human precision. "We can't stay here," Reed muttered. "No," Hale said, "we fight here." He pointed toward the collapsed crawler wreck below. "We use that for cover. Shade, take high position on the ledge and focus on the command nodes, the things glowing blue on the walkers' backs. Reed and I will draw fire." Cruz hesitated for only a breath. "That's suicide, sir." "Only if you miss," Hale said. She nodded once and crawled toward the upper slope, moving with practiced efficiency despite her limp. Hale and Reed sprinted downhill, kicking up dust as plasma bolts scorched the ground around them. One blast struck close enough to throw Reed sideways, his armor flaring with melted edges. Hale pulled him behind the wreck and checked for movement. The younger man gritted his teeth, clutching his shoulder. "Still functional," Reed gasped. "Then keep your head down." Hale fired his last rifle rounds at the approaching infantry, more to disrupt than destroy. Blue sparks flared where the bullets struck alien armor, but most rounds bounced harmlessly. These soldiers weren't fragile like drones. They adapted. Hale ducked back just as a return shot gouged a glowing crater into the metal hull beside him. Above, Cruz adjusted her scope. Her view was steady despite the thunder of gunfire below. She slowed her breathing, lining up the nearest walker's command node, a glowing crystalline structure pulsing in rhythm with the machine's movements. She exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The first shot hit low, glancing off armor. She adjusted, fired again. The bullet punched through, and the walker convulsed. A burst of blue light erupted from its joints before the entire machine collapsed in a tangle of limbs. "One down," she murmured. "Good shot," Hale said, voice taut over comms. Second walkers shifting right. The remaining walker pivoted, firing a salvo that shattered the upper ridge. Cruz rolled sideways, narrowly avoiding the blast. The concussion sent her tumbling down a few meters, scraping her forearm raw, but she held onto her rifle. The air was thick with heat and grit. She blinked through the haze, found the machine again, and noticed something new, a figure atop it, humanoid but larger, encased in armor that shimmered with liquid metal. Commander Tarek Voss. She'd read the name in mission briefs before deployment. An alien tactician known for leading from the front, his body augmented with neural tech that blurred the line between soldier and machine. If he was here personally, this wasn't just retaliation. It was extermination. Voss raised an arm, and the walker's turrets adjusted instantly, targeting her position. Cruz ducked behind a rock, heart pounding. Hale's voice crackled in her ear. "Talk to me, Shade." "He's here," she whispered. "Voss." On the second walker. There was a pause, then Hale's steady reply. "Then we end it here." He turned to Reed, whose face had gone pale beneath the visor. "We need a distraction. EMP grenades, short range, timed." Reed fumbled through his pack, pulling out 2 devices. "We only got these because you ignored the supply manifest," he said weakly. "Guess my paranoia paid off." Hale grinned, though the expression didn't reach his eyes. "On my mark." He sprinted from cover, zigzagging between rocks as plasma bolts tore through the air. Reed followed, throwing the first grenade at the walker's feet. It exploded in a pulse of white light, distorting the air. The walker staggered, circuits flickering. Hale reached its base, vaulted onto a jutting ledge, and climbed. Each movement was pure instinct now. Calculated, efficient, desperate. Cruz steadied her rifle again. Voss turned toward Hale, raising a wrist cannon that began to glow. She had 1 shot, maybe 2, before he fired. Her breath slowed. The world narrowed to the reticle in her scope and the faint pulse of her heartbeat. She fired. The round hit Voss's shoulder, spinning him sideways. He fired wildly, his blast scorching the rocks meters from Hale, but missing its mark. Hale reached the top and slammed his final grenade into the walker's vent system. "Now!" he shouted, dropping back as it detonated. The explosion tore through the machine's frame, sending shards of molten metal into the air. Voss was thrown free, crashing onto the rocks below. The walker collapsed beside him, its massive limbs folding inward like a dying animal. Hale hit the ground hard, the impact rattling his armor. Cruz scrambled down from the ridge to meet him, sliding the last few meters. Voss rose unsteadily, his armor cracked but functional. Blue light leaked from beneath the plates where the grenade had scorched his systems. He looked almost human for a moment, expression twisted not in rage, but in something close to respect. "You fight like a species that refuses to die," he said, voice translated through static. Hale raised his pistol, out of rounds but unwilling to lower it. "You figured that out too late." Cruz lifted her rifle, sighting center mass. Voss straightened, defiant even in defeat. "This world will consume you," he said. "Your endurance means nothing against inevitability." "Maybe," Hale replied, "but it means something today." Cruz fired. The bullet struck Voss through the chest, and the light behind his visor dimmed. He fell silently, armor cooling to ash. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The ridge was quiet except for the crackle of burning wrecks. Reed limped up from the valley, grinning despite the smoke. "That was insane," he said. "You realize Command's never going to believe this." Hale holstered his empty pistol and surveyed the horizon. "They don't have to. We're still alive." Cruz sank against a rock, muscles trembling from exhaustion. "For now," she said. He glanced at her. "You doubt me, Chief?" She shook her head faintly. "Not you, sir. Just the universe's sense of humor." A faint rumble echoed in the distance. Ships breaking atmosphere. Maybe reinforcements, maybe something worse. Hale didn't know. What mattered was that they'd survived the impossible again. He looked toward the burning wreckage of Voss's command unit, then at Cruz. "We hold this ridge until extraction," he said. Cruz reloaded her rifle, a slow smile forming despite the fatigue. "Wouldn't have it any other way." The wind picked up, carrying the metallic scent of victory and ruin. Above them, the sky shimmered with distant flashes from the orbital battle still raging. Hale adjusted his visor, scanning for a beacon signal. For now, the ridge was theirs, but somewhere beyond the haze, the war continued. Dawn came slowly to Kryn, 47, if dawn could even be called that. The twin suns bled pale gold through the dust-thick air, washing the ridge in muted light. The battlefield below lay silent, a graveyard of alien metal and blackened stone. Smoke still coiled upward from the wreck of the second walker, drifting lazily into the copper sky. Lieutenant Mason Hale stood at the ridge's edge, helmet off, feeling the wind bite his skin. The air was sour with ozone, yet it carried something clean beneath the scorched tang, a reminder that he was still breathing. Behind him, Reed worked over the comm relay they had scavenged from the crawler's wreck. Sparks leapt each time he twisted the wires. "Signal strength's weak," Reed muttered, "but I think I can piggyback off the crawler's array. If the fleet's still out there, they'll hear us." Cruz sat cross-legged beside a rock, cleaning her rifle with mechanical focus. The barrel was scored black from the last shot that had ended Voss. She ran a rag over the metal, slow and deliberate, as though erasing the memory. "If the fleet's still out there," she repeated softly. "They are," Hale said. "They have to be." He didn't believe it as much as he wanted to. He'd seen the retreat from orbit, the blinding streaks of human ships pulling back under alien fire. But Cruz didn't need his doubt. She needed direction, and he could still give her that. Leadership, he had learned long ago, was often the act of believing for others when you couldn't for yourself. Reed cursed under his breath and slapped the relay's casing. "Got something." The screen flickered to life, displaying faint telemetry, scrambled, weak, but unmistakably human. "It's a distress beacon, 30 clicks south. Automated, probably from one of our downbirds." Hale stepped closer. "Can it transmit?" "Barely, but if I rig a pulse through the alien array, it might reach orbit. The power core's unstable, though. It'll blow after one burst." Cruz set down her rifle and stood, brushing dust from her armor. "Then we make that burst count." They began moving quickly. Reed adjusted the frequency modulation while Cruz carried the core's coupling, its glow pulsing faintly through the cracks. Hale checked their perimeter every few minutes, scanning the valley for movement. The quiet was unsettling. The aliens had retreated after Voss's fall, but he knew better than to trust silence. The enemy didn't rest. They recalculated. As Reed worked, Cruz watched the horizon. The suns climbed higher, heat waves rippling through the valley. She could feel fatigue settling deep in her muscles, the kind that no amount of rest could fix. Yet she couldn't look away from the wreckage below, the smoldering machines, the scarred earth, the reminder of what they had done. "You ever think," she said quietly, "that maybe we weren't meant to win here? That command sent us to die, buying time for something else." Hale paused beside her. "I've thought it," he admitted, "but I stopped caring. Doesn't change the job." Cruz gave a short, humorless laugh. "Still following orders, even when there's no one left to give them." "Somebody has to keep the line straight," Hale said. "Otherwise, we're just ghosts." Reed looked up from his work. "Power's stable for now. Once I hit transmit, we'll have 10 seconds before the core burns out." "Then do it," Hale said. Reed hesitated. "We might light ourselves up doing this. If there's anything left out there hunting, they'll see it." Hale looked at Cruz, then at the smoking horizon. Let them see. Maybe it'll remind them humans don't go quietly. Reed swallowed and flipped the switch. The relay flared to life, a bright lance of light shooting skyward. The air shimmered with static. Cruz shielded her eyes as the pulse built to a shriek. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and then, with a sound like a thunderclap, the device overloaded. The light vanished, leaving only the hum of wind and the faint crackle of dying circuitry. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The silence pressed heavy on their chests. Then Cruz's calm crackled, weak, intermittent, but real. Echo 9, this is Fleet Command. Do you read? Coordinates, verified beacon. The signal fractured into static, then reformed. Extraction inbound. Hold position. Reed hooped, punching the air. They heard us. Hale exhaled slowly, a tight smile ghosting across his face. Told you they'd still be out there. Cruz lowered her hand from her ear, a faint tremor running through her fingers. Extraction, she murmured, almost in disbelief. After all this time, Hale turned toward the horizon where the suns burned bright. After all this time, he repeated. The victory felt fragile, a small flame in the cold. He knew the fleet might not even be the same command they'd left. For all he knew, Kryn, 47 was already marked for abandonment. But the promise of rescue was enough. It meant their fight mattered. Hours passed as they waited, tension suspended between them like wire. Reed scavenged parts for flares, while Cruz recalibrated her rifle one last time. Hale paced the ridge, replaying every decision, every loss. Dwyer, Hayes, the others, they'd bought this moment with their lives. He owed them more than survival. He owed them meaning. The sound came first, a distant hum that built into a low, resonant roar. Hale turned toward the west and saw the dropship cutting through the haze, its engines kicking up waves of dust. The ship was scorched and battered, paint stripped from its hull, but it was human. That was all that mattered. Reed waved his arms, igniting a flare. Over here, Echo 9 survivors. Cruz smiled, small and genuine. Didn't think I'd ever see one of those again. The dropship descended in a swirl of dust and light. As it settled, Hale felt a strange heaviness lift from his chest. He turned to Cruz. You first. She shook her head. You're the ranking officer. Not arguing. Move. She hesitated, then stepped toward the ramp. The heat from the engines rippled against her armor, the noise deafening. She paused halfway and looked back at him. You know, she said over the roar, I wasn't sure we'd make it. Not after the crash. You did, Hale said. That's what matters. Her eyes softened. No, sir. We did. He nodded once, words unnecessary. Together, they climbed aboard. Reed followed, collapsing onto a seat with a sigh that sounded half relief, half disbelief. The hatch sealed behind them, muting the wind outside. As the ship lifted, Hale looked through the viewport at the ridge shrinking below. It was nothing more than scorched rock and shattered metal now. But to him, it was sacred ground. The place they'd proved humanity's stubborn heart still beat strong. The fleet might retreat, planets might burn, but as long as even one human refused to bow, the species endured. Cruz sat beside him, head tilted back against the bulkhead, eyes closed. Where do you think they'll send us next? She asked. Somewhere worse, Hale said. She smiled faintly. Figures. Reed chuckled weakly from across the cabin. At least they'll have to invent new metals for this one. Hale didn't answer. He watched the ridge disappear beneath clouds of ash, and for the first time since the mission began, he allowed himself to breathe without counting the cost. The comm buzzed again, Fleet Command confirming coordinates, promising debrief, med-evac, rearmament. The war was far from over, but the tone carried something he hadn't heard in a long time, pride. As the dropship climbed higher, the light shifted from gold to white. Below, Kryn, 47 stretched out endless and broken, the scars of battle fading into distance. Cruz opened her eyes and followed his gaze. You think anyone will ever come back here? Hale thought of the ridge, the fallen, the impossible odds. Maybe, he said, but not for war. Someday, maybe they'll come back to remember. She nodded. The hum of the engines filled the quiet between them. Outside, the suns rose higher, burning through the haze, turning the valley into a field of light. The ridge, their ridge, shone faintly in the distance, marked by the twisted remains of alien steel and a single glint of human armor. They had been left for dead, but the universe, Hale decided, would remember differently.